Okay, ja, hallo, herzlich willkommen, schönen guten Morgen zum Automatica-Forum hier auf der Automatica 2023, präsentiert von der Messe München und der Automationspraxis. Wir haben hier die ganze Woche über von morgens bis abends volles Programm. Es geht natürlich um Robotik, um Roboter in den unterschiedlichsten Branchen, Anwendungen. Heute ein Thema, zum Beispiel ein Vortrag zu Robotern in der Textilindustrie. Morgen ein Panel zum Thema Handwerk. Dann natürlich die klassischen Industrieprozesse logischerweise. Aber wir haben am Donnerstag auch, beziehungsweise heute, ein Podium zum Thema schöner Leben und Arbeiten mit Robotik. Also da geht es so um die üblichen Industrieprozesse hinaus, wie die Roboter in unserem Leben quasi eine Rolle spielen können und uns bereichern können. Es geht um KI natürlich, keine Technologie kommt zurzeit ohne KI aus. Die ganze Woche Nachhaltigkeit, die CO2-neutrale Fabrik. Am Freitag ein Panel zur Elektromobilität, wie Roboter bei der Produktion von Batterien zum Beispiel unterstützen. Dann die mobile Robotik, auch dazu haben wir ein Panel am Donnerstag. Leichtbau, also volles Programm hier die ganze Woche über bis einschließlich freitags von morgens bis abends. Aber jetzt und hier geht's los mit Eirik Norman Hansen, Speaker und Futurist. Und so geheimnisvoll und vielversprechend sein Titel, so auch dann der Titel der Präsentation, Beyond the Obvious. And I'm very exciting and it's your stage. Bitte schön, bin sehr gespannt auf Ihren Vortrag.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no idea what he said, but I hope it was good. Yeah. Are you all good? Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Eirik Norman Hansen, and then my job is to try and understand what technology can be used for, how it changes us, how it changes our organizations, and how it impacts the society we're part of. So I will start off this conference by kind of setting the mood for what I think the purpose of this conference is, to see beyond the obvious and how we can use technology in the best way possible. And I thought maybe, we should start by a little bit slow. It's early morning, and maybe we should start with a little bit art, or this artificial intelligence art. Have you tried artificial intelligence art? Generating pictures, it's pretty cool. I can't draw, I can paint, so I thought maybe we could do that like this. I could write something, and then a picture of a man dressed in black talking about the future of technology in front of a group of professional business people. This is this scene, right? And the AI decided that it looks like this. It's pretty neat, right? And then the interesting thing about artificial intelligence is that they can ask it to do exactly the same thing, but pretend as if Vincent van Gogh was here painting us, and then it will be like this instead. And I think that's pretty cool, because I'm pretty sure that Vincent van Gogh never painted a robot before, but now he has. And then of course, we don't really need to go to exhibitions like this, because we could just ask artificial intelligence about how and why we need to look beyond the obvious. And then we will get the answer like this. And that's a pretty long answer, and I said to the AI, the chat GTP, that thank you so much, and it's important to be polite to the machine as well, so they don't get pissed off. And then could you shorten it and maybe do it like if you were a pirate? And of course it can, which is also really funny to try out to see how the technology is actually working. But what we could combine those two. What if it was possible to create a presentation based on artificial intelligence? And of course it is. You can use a service called Tome AI, and you just put in the title that you wanted to make a presentation of, and then it ends up creating a presentation with a structure, with content, with pictures. And this is the presentation deck I got. And to be frank, I don't really need to be here. I can go and grab a cup of coffee, and then you can enjoy yourself with my digital alter ego, Mr. Eirik Norman Hansen.
You might as well leave now. I can take it from here.
Thank you.
Today, we are going to explore the importance of looking beyond the obvious. It's easy to fall into the trap of making assumptions
I hope that you would like to listen to me instead. But what I've done here is to use ChatGPT, Vama to create a beautiful picture of myself, then Tome to create the presentation, and then a service called DID that will actually create or map up my face, and I can choose the language, and I can choose a voice, and I can put in whatever I want it to say, and it will create that avatar talking for you instead. And the thing is that we didn't know, we had no idea. Just a few years ago, we had no idea that this is going to be possible. When I grew up in Oslo, when I was 10, in 1980, science fiction became a thing. That was a big thing. And a lot of the different science fiction stories, they were about the year 2000. And I was really, really, looking forward to grow up in a city like this. And we were going to have houses like this. And when finally the 1st of January came around, I remember getting up really, really early that day, running out into the living room, peeking out of the window, and I was kind of disappointed. The city still looked like that. Nothing really happened. We took over my parents-in-law's house. It's not a futuristic house at all. I tried to kind of upgrade it with smart light bulbs and some robot vacuum cleaners, but it's not a futuristic house at all. The closest I got to kind of my futuristic dream was that I was one of the first people in Norway to get the first electric car. The problem was that the reach of that car was so poor that I had to be delivered by a truck outside my office building. And it was this car here. Couldn't fly, couldn't go far. It was a car that you actually wore, I felt, instead of actually sitting into. So the world was ending up pretty different. But going back to 1980, no one knew that this was going to be the reality in 2000. This is a graphical kind of presentation of the growth of the internet. And just imagine how amazing that is. That's much, much cooler than flying cars and smart buildings. This is what we can use today to create extraordinary solutions for the future. And now, we're surrounded by, we have cell phones and tablets and PCs, and our TVs are online, and cars are online, and houses are online. Everything is online. We don't think about it. We just expect it to work when it should. And this has been going on for a while and changed our priorities. Someone did a survey a couple of years ago. They asked 14 to 29 years old of what they were most afraid of losing in the world. And what do you think they were most afraid of losing in the world? Their cell phone, of course, yeah. On second place, and I don't know, have any of you forgotten your cell phone back home in the morning going to work? What do you do then? Yeah, you go back and pick it up, right? Yeah, and maybe get a little bit late into the office, and sorry I'm late today, but I forgot my cell phone. And that's okay, that's a valid reason these days. So the second thing was the internet, of course. And then the interesting thing about this group of people was further down on the list, pretty far down on the list, they started to be afraid of losing physical stuff like cars, for instance, because we fixed that. There's platforms for these things now. We can swap and change, and we can rent when we need something. And maybe one of the most scary thing about this, survey here was it was only 43% who said they were most afraid of losing their current partner. Yeah. So maybe that's why if you have your cell phone and the internet, that will be taken care of. That's where we are right now. So we're living in really fascinating time, I think. We have never, ever before been able to do so many things as we can right now because of technology. We have huge challenges to take care of. And of course, it's our responsibility to make sure that we do the right things, to make the right choices, to create a better future for ourselves. And then we need to be in control, but we're not at all, because everything is going so fast. You all heard about this exponential development, I guess. But have you really thought about how fast exponential development really is? And that's kind of hard to grasp. That's how fast a lot of the technology that we use every day is growing. So for instance, if we compare it, with linear development, that's pretty easy to understand. That's what we base most of our decisions on. So if you imagine that I'm going 30 steps that way, each step is 1 meter, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, 30 times, I'll end up going 30 meters. That's pretty easy to understand. If I could take exponential steps, that would be interesting, right? And the first step would then be 1 meter, the second would be 2, the third would be 4 meters, and then it doubles, and I take 30 of them. I'll end up getting 26 times around the Earth, the globe instead. And that's how fast technology is growing. And you might have to be a bit crazy to kind of exploit that possibility. And someone who's that crazy, and you might love him or hate him, I don't really care, but Musk is one of those people, you know. He's changed the world in so many ways. And a few years ago, 13 years ago to be exact, he suggested to create a spaceship going up into space and then landing whole again on the Earth so we could be reused. And people were just laughing at him. Scientists were laughing at him. That's not possible. It's only in the comic books you can make rockets like that. 2 years ago, he launched such a rocket. He placed it up in space. It went down to Earth again, whole. While he was up there, he placed a car now going in orbit around the sun. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but it's possible. And you know this, right? The first ever produced Tesla is now orbiting around the sun, and you can go into roadster.com if you like, and you can see where it is. It's gone around the sun once, it's on its way to Mars, and then it's going back to the sun, and it's filled up with really cool references. The guy who's driving the car is named after David Bowie's Spaceman. And in the glove box compartment, there's one book. There's one book you need to bring if you're going into space, and that's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of course. So that's there. And if you read that book, you know that you need to keep track of your towel. That's the most important thing. So that's there. And when they launched the car into orbit, they played David Bowie's Space Oddity on full sound for as long as there were batteries on the Tesla. Also a total waste of time because there's no one there to listen and sound doesn't carry in vacuum. But it's possible, and that's the thing. So you know, we're living in an exponential revolution right now. I guess that most of you people have tried GPT, and the previous version, the 3.5 version, had 175 billion parameters. That's kind of the brain of the thing. And then version 4 came, and just overnight it increased to 1,000 billion or trillion. I mean, that's a big number, and that's the pace of the development of the technology. So the technology is, you know, boosting away. People are changing as well because we are starting to use technology based on a value. We believe or we have an idea of what we can use the technology for, and we call that hyper-adoption. And to illustrate what I mean by hyper-adoption, I did a survey a couple of years ago. I asked 1,000 people if they would like a chip underneath their skin if it was not dangerous. Anyone here care for a chip underneath their skin if it's not dangerous? No one? Yeah, cool one. 13% in my survey said that sounded like a great idea. And the interesting thing about that was when I asked them why, no one talked about tracking and security and that stuff. What they were into was what they could use it for. So you know, that would be cool because I always tend to forget the key to the gym. I could start my car, I could pay in the canteen, I could pay in the store. And then someone told me that, you know, you can actually get the chip like that. There's a guy in Stockholm, in Sweden, who is working on projects using technology to enhance the human body. So I went there and said hi to Hannes. Looks like a pretty ordinary straight guy, complete nutcase. But we ended up being good friends, Hannes and I. And he asked me, do you want a chip underneath your skin? And before I knew it, I was in a taxi going to the dodgy end of Stockholm Centrum, going to a piercing studio for the first time in my life. So if you're a bit weak-hearted, you need to look away now because it ended up like this. Keep on breathing, the guy said. I was pretty pale. I'm not too fond of needles. And then when I looked up, and it did really hurt, and I asked him in forehand, does it hurt? And he said nothing. And when I came to my senses, he was standing over there, and on the back of his T-shirt, he said, of course it fucking hurts. What do you think? I'm going to put a needle in your hand. So, well, anyways, I now have an NFC chip in my hand. I can use it to operate the printer. I can unlock my locker. I can pay the canteen. I can actually open the door. And then kind of came into a habit, this thing here. So I now got the second one with a light bulb in it, where I have put my business card. So if you want to, you can come over afterwards with your cell phone. You can scan me and you get my business card. And this is the same kind of technology that we use for cats and dogs, to ID mark cats and dogs. And so I also put in my owner's information. So if I fall off on the street, you can just call a veterinarian. They'll scan me and they know who owns me. And then if there's no life left, you know, I have my full DNA profile in there as well. So you can kind of create a replica of me if you like. And we have a cat, which is kind of cool because me and our cat, we can also open the cat hatch, which is really important. So this is kind of why we're using technology. And we have changed. You know, people have changed. Suddenly, the last 3 years, there were more internet, more digital services, more online shopping, more digital communication on everyone. We were shock digitalized, all of us, because of the pandemic. And this changed us. You know, now we know, Forrester Research did a huge survey last year. They've seen that it's an increase in investment in smart infrastructure, not the light bulbs and the robot vacuum cleaners, but actually creating a more sustainable and smart infrastructure. They also asked people. 80% of people say that they now you perceive the world as digital. It's not a either or anymore. It's just digital. And you know, 70% of people on the age of 25, they prefer gaming for watching a movie or you know, a series on TV. Which means that we need to approach these people in a different way. And I also thought that this was cool. This is the World Economic Forum. They published a survey or a report last year, and it started out stating that 65% of all 6-year-olds, you know, all the kids starting at school this year, they will end up working in jobs that are not invented yet, which I think is really interesting. So if you have a little kid back home, you know, ask him, what are you going to be when you grow up? And he said, I don't know. He's probably right. You know, and you don't have to dig very deep into the internet to find new positions already, because we have like companies now hiring chief robotic officers, and the chief robotic officer's job is not to get rid of people, it's to see how we can use the resources we have today to create, you know, a more sustainable future, to do more with the resources we have. We need bot supervisors, AI trainers, and also chief metaverse officers. They look like that, if you wondered. I asked, you know, DALL-E to paint a picture for me. So we are changing, you know, and we are already doing extraordinary cool stuff. In January every year, there's a huge technology conference in Las Vegas, the CES, and I went there, and a bunch of different stuff that you can try out. Some of it I don't understand, have no idea what that was. That was pretty cool. That's a Ring Doorman in-house drone surveillance camera that will fly in your apartment or house to kind of see if everything is okay. Different scooters, you know, lawn movers on steroids, everything is bigger. But the big kind of trends from there was that we have this thing called corporate digital innovation. Because of lack of resources, we don't have enough people anymore. You know, we need to figure out how we can use technology to help us produce and deliver what we are trying to deliver already. People are more into metaverses and extended realities, artificial intelligence and all that stuff. And of course, we personally are into our own health, our own security, and the energy use was really popular in January because the electricity bills were so high. And then we need more, you know, smarter common infrastructure to build stuff on. And some of the things I found, this is a cute little robot called Luna. And it's an artificial intelligently based toy pet that you can have in your home. It recognizes me. It comes to play. It wants to be petted. I can play with it. And thankfully I can also turn it off because it can be a bit intense once in a while. But this is a big thing, you know, because in certain areas in the world, you are not allowed to have a pet dog. You can have this instead. The metaverse was all over the place, and I really love this. I was able to try these haptic suits. And the interesting thing about this, connected to an industrial computer, for instance, I could suddenly, you know, feel the things that I saw virtually, that I was touching. I could feel it was a kind of shooting game. I could feel that I was, you know, aimed at. I could also, you know, they used GPT and a simulator inside the VR world. So I met a guy, a virtual guy. I could have a conversation with him. I could shake his hand, and then he asked for a hug. And that was pretty strange because I could feel that he was touching my back. So we're kind of submersing ourselves into that kind of technology. And this is not only for game and fun. This is for use for industrial purposes, because it's so much better to actually feel what you're doing when you're doing stuff remotely in VR. And you could also connect a device on your VR glasses that creates synthetic smell. So you could actually smell your surroundings, which is also a great thing for industrial purposes. And you know, technology has come so far, so everyone can be a pilot. I bought a new DJI drone, and this is my friend Hans Petter, and I don't recommend people to try this, but this was the third time that I flew that drone. And I'm wearing goggles, and it's a super easy controller, and I could actually do this. And I guess that most of you would be able to do that on first try. And that means something for how we can, you know, apply these technologies into industrial work as well. And during the pandemic, you know, we were online all the time. And I was asked by a little consultancy in Oslo. They thought it was a pity they couldn't have a Christmas party. So they were actually buying VR goggles to all their employees, and they had their Christmas party in VR. And I was asked to come and do a talk, and it was pretty strange because I had to meet up, you know, 30 minutes before because I was supposed to be a surprise. I had to hide in the back room. There was a back room. I was standing in the door and watching people come. I had no legs, so I could float around. And then when I was done with my talk, I was standing there. Of course, I was sitting in my office and everyone else was sitting back home. But I was standing there talking to two guys, and they said that, oh, there's a free seat over there. Let's go sit down. And it felt so good to sit down. We kind of forgot that we were standing all the time because the technology kind of, you know, immerses you so well. So I built my own office, and now, you know, Apple has launched their new goggles. They're coming next year. And the interesting thing is that they're focusing much more on augmented mixed realities instead of fully, you know, immersed virtual realities, because they want us to use that to be able to cooperate, to work, to do, you know, meet one another in that space. And then there's a Norwegian company called HoloCare that uses Microsoft's HoloLenses for heart surgery, together with some of the greatest heart surgeons in the world. The first step they managed to do is to scan your heart, so they get kind of a digital twin of your heart. So instead of opening you up, they can actually examine your heart like that. They can invite an expert in Tokyo or in Cape Town. And the next phase of that project would be to practice on the digital heart to do the operation already. And if it's a very complicated operation, in theory you could then, and they're not there yet, but in theory you can then start to practice the operation. When it succeeds, the computer says that now it was perfect. You can just press play, and then there's a surgical robot doing exactly what the doctors have just done. The other thing about this is that then you can also, you don't need to be a surgeon to operate that robot. You can, you know, then provide these kind of healthcare services to other parts of the world where they are not so fortunate as we are to have, you know, proper heart surgeons at hand. So, and we are going into each other's heads. I found this on the internet. This is called a Next Mind. It's a thing that you put on the back of your head. I calibrated my computer so I can now control certain simple functions by just looking at them. I'm not sure how it works, but it works. And I showed this to a friend of mine. He broke his neck a couple of years ago, and he was totally paralyzed. And he said, just imagine what I could do with that if you could connect that to a couple of VR glasses. I could actually be able to participate in things that I could not usually participate in. And what if we could connect that to some kind of robot that could actually be present physically in another space based on this kind of technology, and it's now actually possible. And then we all remember what happened when Boston Dynamics launched this, you know, cutie. People were terrified. You know, people who didn't understand robotics, they were terrified. They thought, and now they're coming, taking over the world. You know, they can take the elevator and find the stairs. And until Boston Dynamics showed this movie here, to illustrate how good this thing is to not lose balance. That's the purpose of this film. This film generated a complaint storm to the animal rights organizations in the United States. You know, because, yeah, they might be taking over the world, but we need to treat them with respect already. So we have to keep up. There are, you know, cities are growing. We know that we are getting into more and more urban areas. And people are very, you know, looking forward to technology, they're very positive to technology. SAS Institute did a survey last year asking people how likely they thought that these things would be, you know, ordinary in the year 2025. And a lot of people thought that that would be, you know, ordinary. And then in 2030, they asked the same people about 2030, and some of the figures almost doubled. And the point there is that it's not important that it ends up just like that. It just shows that people are very positive to the technology that we are developing, and they are, you know, eager to start using it. So we are, you know, reinventing all our touch points, and that's also important. I worked a bit with a very big sales organization at the end of the pandemic, and all the sales representatives there, they really looked forward, you know, to go out in the world, having lunches, having dinners, and then I was able to ask their clients what they thought. And the client said that, you know what, it's pretty convenient to just have them on video because it takes so much time and it's more efficient. So we are now in the middle of kind of reinventing all the traditional meeting points, using technologies that we see around us to be able to do other stuff and to prioritize differently than we did before. So you know, this is changing our society. This is also changing our organizations, and it's changing people, how we work, how we live, how we perceive life, how we want to live life. And when we change all these things over time, it's also changing culture. So stuff that was, you know, not okay to do before is now, you know, within reach. And that changes the way we are living our lives. So we know that people are you know, into their own health and their own security and how they're living. We are pretty sure that we are going to move around a different way than we did before. We are going to live smarter, and we are going to produce stuff smarter, more on demand, not, you know, more in time. And the mutual thing here is that we are constantly building this smarter and smarter infrastructure that we can connect ourselves on. So we are moving in towards a society that is much more connected and that can actually help us to do amazing things in the future. And all the representatives here today are part of this development. So it is important to look beyond the obvious, not stop, you know, at the tip of your nose. And it might be hard to think that, are we really going to build this, you know, smart infrastructure? And yeah, already Toyota, of all companies in the world, are building what they call the woven city in Japan. And this woven city is built from the ground up. Everything is smart, everything is autonomous. It's a project to see how people and technology can live together in harmony and to figure out how we can use that in the best way possible. So maybe, just maybe, this metaverse thing isn't such a bad idea after all. Maybe we should buy a pair of VR goggles and start to experiment a little bit with what we could actually do in that space and how we can do that in the best way possible. Because we have never ever been able to do so many things as we can today, nor have we had so many challenges. It's definitely our responsibility to make sure that we do the right stuff. And then we need to look beyond the obvious solution and see how we can implement technology in the best way for the future. And then that will also uncover new perspectives and understanding of the technology we have. And I think, and I like to encourage everyone to, you know, play a little bit. I love drones, as you probably have understood already, and then I brought some just for fun. I never ask you know, if it's okay to fly drones, because everyone will always say no, but I'll do it anyway. And these drones are just, you know, they are just toys. Addressed with 3 different sensors. This is the closest I get to be Darth Vader. You know, you can play drone tennis, if you like. I'll like them back afterwards, but isn't it cool? And I think that we should all, you know, play a little bit more with technology to see how we can use that and get used to technology to exploit the best opportunities we have for that technology, for ourselves and our future. So I hope that I open up your minds, that I kicked off this exhibition in the best way possible, so you will go out and be very eager to try out new stuff. And please promise me, when you come up with good, great new ideas, you know, don't keep them to yourself. Go out with them. Don't be afraid that anyone else have done it before or that anyone else will laugh at you. Do like this guy here. He was finally allowed to be a DJ at this year's Christmas party, and he doesn't really care what other things about him, you know. So just let it all loose and go for it. And with that, I say thank you so much for your attention and good luck with the future and have a great expedition, all of you. And I'll collect my drones.